Okay, picture this. An AFL player scoops up the Sherrin from the centre ball up. They take a few bounces, then they launch a massive bomb from inside the centre square. The ball soars 40, 50, 60 metres through the big sticks. Now picture that exact same distance, but imagine a water skier sailing 60 metres through the air. Pretty wild visual, right? Hello, I'm Jamie Mitchell and you're listening to the Armchair Fan Podcast. Today I'm super pumped to chat to the global queen of waterski jumping, Jacinta Carroll. Now that 60 metre distance I was referring to, well, Jacinta's the only female in the history of waterskiing to jump that far. We'll chat about that remarkable achievement, her incredible streak of international victories, and delve into another sport that she's pretty crash hot at. This will be a good one. Here's Jacinta on the Armchair Fan Podcast. Hello, Jacinta. Thanks for coming in.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
So let's go back to 2016. I want you to put me behind the boat on probably one of the biggest days of your career, the day that you jumped further than any female in the history of water skiing jumped. You're at Orlando. Set the scene from there.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy day, actually. I had called up the coach who owned the lake in Orlando a couple of months earlier and said, Kyle, I want to do this. I want to go 60 metres. I want to be the first female to jump 60 metres. Let's do it. So we organised a Tuesday evening event, so not a typical Saturday. And I flew over from Australia and Kyle has a special situation where he is actually from a water ski crash. He was paralysed. He's recovered function. He's a walking miracle. But as a result, he can't do too much functional things in terms of lifting heavy equipment or getting a tournament set up. So that day I was ran off my feet. Like I was organising the event. I was swimming underwater to fix the course when it broke, and all because we were just trying to make the event perfect to have the opportunity that evening for me to go for this big jump. And then this massive storm hit and I was beside myself. I was just walking around upstairs in the judge's tower just waiting for this storm to clear, but at the same time the sun was setting and we were running out of sunlight. So it was literally sunset. By the time I'd worked all day, I was so high on coffee. Like I had way too many coffees to try and get myself pumped up. And the sun was setting, and then, I left the starting dock and I went out, and it was 3 rounds, so in total 9 jumps. And the first 3 jumps didn't really go to plan. Came in, reset myself half an hour later, and it was like most competitions probably would have stopped by now. It was getting quite dark, and then I went out and I broke the world record by 10 centimetres. Came in, celebrated, everyone happy, and they said, "Oh, okay, are you going to go for that last round in another 15 minutes time?" And I said, "Bloody oath I am." And they, "Why? Like you've just broken the world record by 10 centimetres." I was like, "Yes," but I literally organised this event. I flew from Australia for this event, so that jump where I broke it by 10 centimetres was under so much pressure. I was like, I have no pressure left. All I have is me and the lake, and I can just go and ski. The pressure's gone. So then I went out, and that's when I did the 60.3 metres, was when I had no pressure because I'd already done what I wanted to accomplish, was the world record, and the 60 was an even bigger bonus.
So in water skiing, how significant is 60 metres? Like, is this, in cricket, a 50 batting average is really significant. Like, is this like a Neil Armstrong walk on the moon type thing? I mean, what I'm specifically trying to drum down, I mean, how much further ahead is that than the rest of the competition or what people would normally jump?
Yeah, so at the time when I went 60 metres, the second best ranked female in the world, her personal best was 55 metres. And to put that into perspective, so that's a 5 metre difference. And in perspective, the male difference on the world ranking list that year, I think, was 30 centimetres. So it did definitely put me ahead leaps and bounds in front of the pack. But I don't think it's a Neil Armstrong moment in time. Australia measures in metres. Most of the world measures in metres, but America, which is a huge hub of water skiing in the world, they're a little bit backwards still over there, and they measure in feet. So the Neil Armstrong moment is 200 foot, and 60.3, which I went, which was a pretty big moment for me, that's 198 feet. So 2 foot short of that Neil Armstrong moment to go 200 foot.
So 60.3 is the record.
Yep.
Your goal is to reach the 200 feet mark, which is 60.96.
Yep.
I mean, realistically, to get that extra distance, Is it mostly condition based? Is it a bit of wind? Is it, I don't know, not eating so much, but not falling? How do you get that distance?
There's so many stars that need to align on that day. You need a headwind to starters. Our water skis are designed like aeroplane wings that we try to catch that lift force off the top of the ramp. So you need a perfect amount, too much and it slows you down, not enough and you don't have that lift force. So you need that perfect amount of headwind. You need the boat and a strong boat. You know, every engine comes out of the same factory, but they're different strengths. You know, you need the right fuel, you need the right boat, you need a really, really good boat driver, and then you need that perfect wind. So to fly to America for one day to try and break an event, it's tough. So you've got to have some good karma up the back of your sleeve.
I want to expand on boats and are you borrowing boats, are you getting drivers, all that sort of stuff a little later. But can you talk to me, and you did a little bit there about the mechanics of jumping and the takeoff and before. Can you just run through what happens in before a jump, as you hit the ramp, in the air, landing, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so we use our body as leverage. So every female jumps at the same boat speed, but our rope is actually fed through a mechanical switch to the engine. So the boat will hold a little bit slower than 54 kilometres an hour, and then when we pull tight on the rope, it activates the switch in the boat for it to accelerate up to its top speed. So getting that activation at the right time to get that acceleration off the top of the ramp is crucial. If you get it too early, a lot of females aren't strong enough to physically hold that load and they'll lose body position and either put themselves at risk of crashing or they won't go very far because they're not technically in a strong position. So we kind of use ourselves as a pendulum swing. We'll manoeuvre and pull out to the left side of the boat. We'll then generate a swing and we'll whip ourselves out to the right side, and then ultimately we'll make one last turn towards the left side and swing ourselves all the way into the base of that jump ramp and into the air. So trying to get that pendulum swing that the boat's generating its maximum speed as you're, approaching the ramp, if not hitting the ramp. So then it's continuing to accelerate while you're in the air and pull you further down the lake. So there's obviously a lot of mechanics in terms of how long do you wait till you leave your approach to the ramp? And that all starts, 600 foot away from the ramp. You've got to be looking at wind.
Sorry, what's that in metres?
So, oh God, I wouldn't even know.
300?
So it'd be, 120, 180. So, because 200 foot is 60 metres, obviously. So, you're making that judgment call so far away from the ramp. You're looking for gusts on the water. You're looking for wind. You're looking for anything really. And then, okay, well, if I'm changing my turn or technique slightly, where does that put my timing? Am I actually going to make the red part of the ramp and be safe? Or am I going to hit the white part and be off to hospital today?
Yeah, so I've seen a couple of videos where you have bailed on jumps and gone off. How often does that happen where you might crash or have to abort a jump? Yeah,
so we have 3 attempts in a competition and you can abort any jump. You can let go of the handle and glide around the side of the jump and you still get to go for your next 2 in competition. Obviously, if you abort all 3 in competition, you score 0, but you don't have to take them. So some people only take 1 in competition. Some people take all 3. Generally speaking, I usually take most of my jumps, even if I've won a competition. Half the time I've flown halfway around the world for 3 jumps. I'm not going to turn around and go home after 1. So I'll generally take all 3. But there's often times in training where I'll go to the lake and not take any. The wind's not right. I'm fatigued. I'm not feeling good. The risk of going over the ramp when you're not in a very good position is huge.
So you mentioned there that mostly it might be, I'm not feeling quite right, I'm not feeling the jump.
Yep.
Does fear ever creep in?
Oh, 100%. I've just come off the back of a season where I haven't competed. I've come off the back of 12 months with COVID-19 and I'm not in that competition head frame. So I'll be the first to admit that right now I'm probably more fearful of what I call it Big Red, the jump ramp. I'm probably slightly more fearful of Big Red than I ever have been because I haven't been in that adrenaline-seeking competition phase. And I know that, what's the risk of crashing in practice and not being able to go to work this afternoon or tomorrow just to get that good jump in practice. So, it is a fearful sport, but unfortunately, if you let that take over, then you're probably more at risk of crashing.
So does Big Red have different heights, or is it all a set?
Yeah. So the women, we jump at a max height of around 178 centimetres. So that's 5'6" they deem it. The men jump off 185 centimetres, so 6 foot, and the junior kids jump off 5 foot. So 5 foot, 5.5 for women, 6 foot for men.
I want to talk a little bit more about that process of weaving in and out, for probably not the right terminology there. And you are making a lot of calculations on the run. How's the weather? What's the current doing? All that sort of stuff. Are you ever able to, relax, try and, I don't know, meditate's not the word, but is it mostly you're scouting the conditions, or can you take a deep breath and just try and take yourself out of the moment, or are you really just focused on what's going to happen next?
Obviously, the best jumps can happen when you can take yourself out of that moment. So when I did the world record in 2016, it was like a mirror. Like, you look at the photos and the videos at the lake and the water was just smooth, which isn't ideal for world records. We want a headwind. But what it meant was I trusted that boat driver. The boat was same. The water was the same. So between each jump, it was my technique that needed to change and nothing else. Whereas, usually you've got wind and you've got this. So in some situations you can zone out and really just let the comfort of your ability take over. But generally speaking, on a professional circuit where we're competing on sites that aren't that great, but they're in a really good location for spectators and so forth, you've got to deal with rollers and current. And gosh, I remember in Mandurah in Perth one time we had a dolphin in the course. Like, you're dodging these things to try and get the jump happening. So you're pretty focused at the time, and there's not often where you come in and you're like, oh, what just happened out there?
So in terms of boats, is it your boat? Are you going to Bill's Boats in Orlando? Is it just a Ram driver? Is it your set driver? How does all that work?
Yeah, so every event supplies the boat and the boat driver. So therefore, every competitor has the same boat and the boat driver. So then it is coming down to purely your technique and also a bit of the luck of conditions, because we don't, unlike, say, Winter Olympic snow jumping, they have meterage added or minus based on the wind. Same with sprinting. We don't have that. Whatever the wind is, too bad. But we do have the same boat driver and the same boat to have all things equal. So I'll pack up, leave Brisbane, and I'll get on a flight overseas with just my water skis. I won't take anything else. And vice versa, when they come to compete in the World Cup in Australia, they come and ski behind our drivers with our boats.
Do you get an opportunity to brief the driver? I like this, I like that, go fast here, go slow there, or this is my signal to go, I don't know, anything like that?
Yeah, so the boat is GPS controlled, so just like your cruise control, so they're more steering it, and they're video tracked, so they have to remain on a certain path. So we can choose which path we want. There's 3 options, whether we want the boat to just go straight down between the two buoys or whether they want to sit slightly left or slightly right. But otherwise, the speed's controlled by me activating it behind the boat, and it's maintained by GPS. So they're just steering. There is a few different settings that the boat can play around with, and 90% of the time you're rocking up to a World Cup event with really high-class international drivers, and they know your settings or they know how to change the settings based on the environment. Domestically, sometimes I do provide, listen, this is how I train, this is my settings in training. Do you mind replicating that? Simply because they might not have had as much experience on the international scene. But yeah, more so I've mainly trained behind the drivers that I'm getting in Australia.
This is getting way in the weeds here. So different boats, different brands.
Yeah.
You talked about fuel's got to be right. Like, is there a difference between, I'm just going to use a car reference, right? A Toyota, it takes off a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a lag with the BMW. With the BMW, I've got to change the way I approach the ramp.
Yeah.
Do you know understand what I'm saying?
100%. So each boat obviously has their own horsepower depending on the engine size. They've got their own torque ratios. They've got their own propellers of different shapes and different sizes as well. So there's definitely a different force output and to what timing and point you get that force output. So every manufacturer, there's 3 main ones we jump in worldwide. Nautique probably tows the most events worldwide. I'm fortunate enough to be sponsored by them, so I train behind a Nautique. But usually, we do have Mastercraft and Malibu and the wake sizes as well because of the hull shape. You'll get different wake sizes. Therefore, when you're traveling towards the ramp, you'll get more airtime or less airtime. So it is definitely different, and it's the same as, jumping in a BMW versus an Audi, or racing around Bathurst in a Ford versus a Holden. But that's the ability of the best skiers, I guess, to not let that impact them and be able to still perform to their utmost best, no matter what brand they're behind.
So is jumping and water skiing like long jump? It is solely distance?
100%.
Nothing to do with style?
So you can look out of control. You can be flying through the air with your hands everywhere, and it will probably impact your distance. But ultimately, where you land is where you land, and you have no extra points added or minus because of technique. So you could look like the worst jumper in the world, but if your measurement comes back as 60.4, well, then you've won.
So there's tricks, there's slalom as well. You do dabble in slalom, is that right?
Yeah, so I slalom and trick, both for the Australian team. I don't do it on the international circuit of like professional events. So I'll compete at World Championships in it. So at the last Worlds, I actually made the trick final and came fourth in overall, which is all three events combined. But when I'm heading off overseas by myself, not for a World Championships, I'll just jump.
Before we delve in a little bit more about your career, at what point do you realise I'm really good at like going behind a speedboat and jumping really far? Like, when does that come into it?
I don't know. Like, I wasn't that great as a junior. So I just have this ridiculous work capacity, and honestly, I'm not the most talented. And you look at my technique, and it's definitely been ripped to shreds by some professionals in the past. Like, it's not the most technique, but I just don't give up, and I just work really hard. And I think that's what got me to where I am today, that I have a few things in life that really motivate me, and I firmly believe that I work the hardest, and therefore the results show for themselves.
Can you expand on that working harder? So train more, spend more time debriefing. I mean, are there any tangibles that you can put your finger on it that you do over the competition?
Yeah, so even from a young age, I was really fortunate growing up in Geelong, Victoria, that they had a regional sport program. So it was basically a replication of, Victorian Institute of Sport or Queensland Academy of Sport, but on a regional level. So we had access to gym. We had access to nutritionists. We had meetings with psychologists and people to help us goal set. So from the age of 14, I learned to be an elite athlete. I wasn't getting thrust into that limelight and learning of those attributes to be an elite athlete when I was 20. So I learned at a very young age of what it was like to live as an elite athlete. So, for example, like I didn't have a sip of alcohol until the age of 24. Not one sip. Wow. Because every day I would be doing something to better myself as an athlete. And bettering myself as an athlete wasn't going out with friends partying. So it takes a lot of sacrifice, and I had to sacrifice a lot to get to where I was. My gym ability and strength in the gym is definitely also a huge strength of mine. And it's probably one thing that I've noticed that the other female competitors don't do as much of. And looking back, I would probably say, we all train as hard when we're on the water, but what are we doing off the water? And I'm not going to the movies. God, I can't remember the last time I watched a movie because I don't have that much time in my life. Like, I'll go to the gym, and I'll do those things to better my on-water performance rather than just training more on the water.
So I'm curious to delve into the water skiing circuit, both here in Australia, but also internationally. So how often are you on the water training and competing? And I imagine to get a boat out and skis and all that sort of stuff, it's not like running around an oval, it's a lot of work, time involved, money. So how often do you actually train on the water? Imagine normal times because everything's upside down. Yeah,
so normally I would be about, what are we now, end of April? I'd be 2 weeks out from getting on a plane to go to America, normally. So I would be training hopefully 4 days a week on the water, 4 days a week off the water in the gym. So 4 gym sessions plus 4 water sessions. At the moment, because I'm not leaving in 2 weeks, I'm still attempting to do minimum 3, but it's posing difficulties. Obviously, the season's ended in Australia. It's getting colder. So I want to train, But my boat crew, my boat driver, the other people who come skiing with me, they're not so keen to get out on the water at the moment. So there's a really tough battle between me trying to stay calm in my head and know that what I'm doing off the water is still contributing and helping me when I do get on the water, and focusing on that component at the moment when I can't control how much I can be on the water. But yeah, you're right. You need a $150,000 boat. You need a boat driver. You need an observer. You need all of these things to go train. I can't just pick up my sneakers and go train.
So where do you train? Is that
Sunshine Coast?
Wow. So, I mean, even that, the back and forth driving.
Yeah. So like I'll say, for example, on a Tuesday, I'll get up at 4:45 in the morning. I'll leave home at 5. I'll be at the sunny coast by 6:30. The boat will be in the water. I'll be warmed up by 7. I'll train for an hour. I'll pack it up. I'll drive back straight to work, start work at anywhere between 10, 10:30, 11 a.m. and work until 7:30 that night. Get home at 8, wake up the next morning at 4:45 and go to gym.
Dedication, eh? So you mentioned seasons too. I'm assuming Australian season in the summer, and then Europe and America is rock and rolling in our winter. Is that roughly what the competition
so it
is like?
usually kind of goes America in like May, June, and then a bit of Europe through July, August, and then potentially back to America in September, October. Generally speaking, we have one event in Australia and sometimes one in New Zealand that's in March. So that's a start of the season for all the internationals, and usually the start of my season as well. I don't often do much of the domestic tour because I'm trying to save my body for our winter, which is the Northern Hemisphere summer.
Where are some of the places you've really loved to compete? So I know you spent a lot of time in the US. Anything particular that comes to mind in terms of bucket list?
Yeah, I love going to Russia. And if you had have asked me this when I was 20, 21 on the tour, I had some frightful experiences in Russia, and I wouldn't have said that would have been my favourite place to go, but it's a pretty amazing, we compete in Moscow when we're there, and it's a pretty amazing city architecturally, especially to go and view and go and see, and they just, the organisers there are great and really wanting to give back to the sport and not asking for much in return, so I've always enjoyed going there. And then some of our world championships in Paris, right on the edge of the city, that was pretty phenomenal as well.
That'd be gorgeous. Moomba Masters as well.
Oh, yeah. So they're obviously internationally favourites, but ultimate favourite is at home in Melbourne, biggest crowd of the year by far, and I'm from Geelong, so I deem, Melbourne, Geelong, same, hometown, so it's the only time of the year that my family can come and view me and watch me compete, so that's the biggest thrill in our sport, I think, is jumping under the fireworks at night on Moomba.
Really sweet, eh?
Yeah.
Some of the videos are terrific too. Now, look, I did mention it in the intro, and it does sound a little bit, a bit of a hyperbole, but the global queen of water ski jumping, I'm not exaggerating. You've had a significant streak of international titles. I think we counted 39, is that right?
Yeah. So 39 in a row. So the last time I didn't win gold, I won silver at the Moomba Masters actually in March 13th, 2012.
Do you ever take stock that you are the best in the world? I mean, it's a pretty significant achievement to be the best in the sport anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. It either hasn't sunk in, or probably because I'm not invested. Well, no, I'm invested. I'm not in the limelight of the sport 24/7. So for me, I don't live in Florida where 90% of the competitors live because they can train 12 months of the year. And that's where all the boat manufacturers and kind of sponsorship comes from. So because I don't thrust myself into that world and I'm not around water skiers 24/7, I don't think of that. Like, I go for my training session on the sunny coast by myself, and I come back to work, and when I walk in the door at work, I'm just Jacinta Carroll, a physiotherapist. I'm not Jacinta Carroll, the world champion or the world record holder. I'm not somebody who anybody knows. I'm just doing my job. So I guess that, in a way, has probably made me not think of myself like that, if that makes sense.
Has it ever been an option to perhaps base yourself in the US?
It has, and I've said no multiple times. Unfortunately, water skiing is not a sport you do to make money. Not at all. And yes, we can win prize money, but at the end of the day, by the time you pay for your expenses, you're not making much in return. So I really wanted to push for a career outside of skiing because I couldn't sustain just competing. So unfortunately, it's probably the one bad aspect about water skiing is I personally deem it as a bit of a white elitist sport. You know, everybody who's in it, like you got to have a $155,000 boat just to start in the sport. So there is a lot of that kind of money around, and I wasn't one of those people. So I knew I had to have a job and had to educate myself to be able to earn money that then pay for myself to stay on the tour.
I know you've been a scholarship recipient here at UQ, and we'll talk a bit more about your study later on. Have there been times, and that scholarship would have helped, support you financially, but have there been times in your career where perhaps financially it just wasn't feasible, that you had to decide against going to one event or the other? Does that happen often?
Definitely. Like the first year I made it onto the Pro Tour, I got a invitation because I won the Moomba Masters in 2011. So then I got invited to the US Masters. So I used the prize money from Moomba to pay for the trip to US. And I honestly remember being in China that year, and I was 18, 5 months out of high school, and I literally had to podium to be able to fly home. Like if I didn't podium, I couldn't afford my flight to the next event. And I knew in the back of my head, like my parents are lovely and would always be there and step in if they had to. But I didn't want to have to call them up in the middle of the night and say, hey, Mum, I came last and I've got no money and I'm stuck in Linyi, China.
Can you send me some Western Union?
Yeah, can you send me some money to get home? So that in itself was a huge motivator. Like I was going paycheck to paycheck, podium to podium, just to afford to finish the tour for the year. So that in itself was a huge motivator to, you have to rock up and do well. You can't bomb out. You've got no choice.
That's intense. Among all the records, all the wins, are there any particular that stand out as I'm really proud of that moment?
My first ever win by far was probably even better than any of my world records. I was in juniors. So I competed in the juniors at Moomba Masters on the Wednesday, Thursday, and then I was ranked 20th in the world in seniors, but I was given an opportunity to ski seniors basically because I was an Aussie and it was an Australian-run international event. And my coach 6 weeks prior had been given terrible news that he had melanoma cancer, and they'd given him 6 weeks to live. So technically that week was meant to be his final. And he was getting treatment at the Peter MacCallum Cancer Clinic up the road in Melbourne. So he was pumped up with about 8 litres of blood, came down in a wheelchair and was there to watch me compete. And I did a personal best and of a lower ramp height, so I was still in the junior category, so I was on the lower ramp height, and I jumped 53 metres. And then because I had to go first, because I was on the lower ramp height, I had to sit there with Ray in his wheelchair and just wait and watch every other girl try and beat me. And fortunately enough for me, somehow no one did. So that was a moment that, even above all the world records, to be able to do that for him for the last time that he's ever going to see me ski was a moment that, I can walk through it in my head every day and remember it because it was, the most significant thing that I'll ever achieve in my sport, I think.
That's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing. I do want to touch on, before we talk a bit more about the last year and how things are looking in 2021, but you've been captain of the Australian water ski team since 2015, a significant role, an amazing achievement to not only represent your country but be selected to be the captain. How important a role is that for you?
Yeah, it's awesome. The depth in Australia goes through ebbs and flows, and at the moment I feel like we've got a really good crop of, youth coming through and people that are really showing signs and some really good talent, and it's just great. I'm such an Aussie that I just love, cheering Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. People go to Worlds and we always stand out as the ones with the best uniform and, watching each other compete, and I just love seeing everybody else be able to pull on the Australian blazer for the first time and know that everything they've ever dreamed of work for, to be able to put that blazer on and say, I'm in the Australian team that they've been able to achieve. So it's a pretty, amazing opportunity to help those athletes and be alongside them, win, loss, whatever happens, being able to be there for a supporter. I wouldn't take that role for granted.
Weird year last year, but we saw a lot of it via Instagram, and seemed to be a lot of backyard training and getting through lockdown months. But how did it hit you when you couldn't compete and perhaps couldn't train as well? Was it difficult for you to navigate? Yeah,
it was. Obviously, everybody, not just athletes, had a very strange and interrupted year. I think I was somewhat okay last year because majority of the events got cancelled. So only one event went ahead. It had money in it, but it didn't have any world ranking points in it. Okay, but this year, this is going to be the stick. This is going to be the kick in the guts, because as an Australian who, can't leave the country currently because of border restrictions, other countries are opening up, other countries are travelling or getting exemptions. So having to sit back and watch others win something that you have won for the last 8 years, and you have, been the top of for the last 8 years, and having to sit back and go, if I was there, would have I won? Is my technique good enough right now? Am I second guessing what I'm doing in training? So without that competition edge to get on the water and compete, it's really difficult training space. So yeah, it was tough last year, but I think it's going to be even tougher in 2021.
So a good start to the year though, national champion in the open women's jump. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we're talking before we recorded that it looks like you've got the green light to head overseas now.
Yeah, so like I just mentioned with borders restrictions, I actually 48 hours ago heard back from the Department of Home Affairs that I have been given an exemption based on a FIFO worker, fly-in, fly-out worker, to be able to leave. I basically did that as a test run to see if I could leave in May for the US Masters, which is, apart from World Champions, probably one of the most biggest events for the year. Unfortunately, it's all well and good to get the exemption until you calculate how much flights are going to cost and how much quarantine is going to cost, your travel insurance at a premium that's not going to cover COVID. And yeah, it's just physically impossible for me to go. It's upwards of $20,000. So ultimately now it's head down, bum up, and try and train and keep myself motivated and in that game zone and headspace to be able to hopefully save enough money to then leave in October, because we have the World Championships in October.
In Florida?
Yeah. So they're in Florida on the lake for which I've tied the world record 3 times. Oh,
happy hunting ground. So not to mention all the border challenges, it sounds like a journey you're going to have to fund yourself as well. Can you talk me through the stress of making those big decisions to...
Yeah, definitely. So unfortunately, the Australian Waterskiier Federation is not in a position to send a team in 2021 because of the restrictions from the Department of Home Affairs and their insurance companies. They've decided not to select a team. So because I'm ranked number 1, I can still attend. I can be nominated by the International Federation themselves rather than needing Australia to nominate me. I can still attend if I raise the money. So basically, yeah, it's looking like it'll be 20 grand just to cover costs. That's not including, obviously, your time off work and so forth. That's just the expenses to actually go. So I'll be working hard, already working 7 days a week, but somehow I'll probably try and squeeze some more hours in and then turn to look for some sponsors and so forth to see if I can get any assistance to help me on that journey. There's been no water ski athletes ever won 5 world championships in a row. So I've won 4, and this would be the 5th.
So to that point, I was going to ask, are you setting goals, being there might be some uncertainty over where you go, but is that still burning hard that you really want to achieve that?
Yeah, and I think the knowledge that I jump really good there, the knowledge that I've equaled the world record there, the knowledge that if you were to break a world record at a world championships, it's automatically approved. That's my burning drive. I could think of nothing better than standing on that podium with an Aussie mask on, knowing that I've just broken that 200 foot. Like, that would be all stars aligned. That would be ultimate. I've got I've got nothing left. That's everything I've got.
Might be a retirement moment. By the sense of it.
It could quite possibly be, but we'll see what happens.
Really good at water skiing, really good at weightlifting, it turns out as well. So it sounds like it has always been a part of your training regime anyway, but you also compete at a really high level. So how did you get into that competitive weightlifting?
Yeah, when I was at the Victorian Institute of Sport, they were lovely enough to actually give me a scholarship for a non-Olympic sport. Whoa, I know, right? Look out. So they were fantastic. When I moved to Queensland, they were letting me train at the QAS, but unfortunately, they don't give scholarships to non-Olympic sports. And they were trying to convince me to give a crack and talent transfer into an Olympic sport. They saw my squat one day and really were pushing me for some winter Olympic sports, but also cycling. But I really wasn't quite ready to quit my water skiing. So they offered weightlifting. And they said, listen, we've got, an athlete that's training here, Damian Kelly, Olympian, won gold at Commonwealth Games. He's willing to take you on and coach you, and he's going to let you water ski. So I really didn't think I was going to lose anything. I'd just come back from World Champs in Mexico and moved to Queensland, and I was dwindling a bit with my motivation. I had won Worlds by 3 meters, 4 meters, I think. I didn't really have someone on my heels clipping to keep pushing me in the gym. I was getting a bit bored, I'm going through the motions, but no other girl's going through the motions kind of thing. So weightlifting provided a really good incentive to give me a reason to continue to push myself in the gym.
Did it also help fill the void? You mentioned the challenges you have. You want to water ski, you're ready, but we're out of season and no one else wants to do it. So does weightlifting kind of find that spot?
100%, because if I'm not water skiing, then I'm in the gym. So I don't think that I'm not water skiing, you know what I mean? Like if I was sitting at home going, great, don't have a training crew today, so everybody else worldwide is doing something to improve themselves and better themselves, and I'm just sitting here. I'm not. I'm in the gym going, I'm becoming fitter, stronger, more explosive, and that will transfer to my explosive energy on the jump ramp.
What's Damian Kelly like to train with? So, Australian, great in weightlifting.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's such a gentle giant. Like you see him walking down the street and you'd probably run for the hills. But he's the softest, gentle giant and really good at being able to, allow me to push when I want to push and then allowing me to pull back. Obviously, I've got the two sports to think about and I can't go 100% 24/7 with both of them. So he's really flexible in allowing me to know my body and know when to push and when I can pull back.
Yeah, so what's the balance there? So water skiing, obviously number one priority, but how close is weightlifting behind?
Jamie, if you had asked me that probably 12 months ago, I would have said, I am, still 100% my goal is water skiing, but I would have said that weightlifting was creeping up and I was, really enjoying it and wanted to push for Birmingham Commonwealth Games. But in the last 12 months, I've really had to reevaluate where I dedicate my time and energy. I work nearly 50-hour weeks. I then drive to the Sunshine Coast 4 days a week for water ski training. I then, at the time, was waking up at 4:30 every morning to go and train in the gym. Like I was breaking down, both physically and mentally. Like I was away from the house from 4:30 till 8 p.m. at night. So I really had to make that judgment call of, was pushing so hard in weightlifting no longer benefiting my skiing? I can probably maintain my strength at 85% and that's still going to be really beneficial for my water skiing. But pushing to those top lifts, was it risking myself with further injury? And therefore, if I was to sustain a serious injury, water skiing, like from weightlifting that meant I couldn't water skiing, could I ever forgive myself? And the answer was no. If I got injured weightlifting and couldn't water skiing, I would never forgive myself.
I wanted to touch on Physio Studies, which you will, but has your studies really helped you learn your body better than ever before in terms of like prep and recovery?
Yeah, I guess it's a catch-22, right? I know a lot about recovery, a lot about performance, a lot about my body. So that's really good to build me up. But it's also, sometimes you second guess it. You're like, oh, is that an injury? Or am I just feeling pain because I know that should have caused an injury? You know what I mean? So sometimes it is good to just lie on the physio bed and have my boss treat me and me pretend dumb and just go, okay, what do you think's going on? How long do you think I should be out? Because if I'm in control of everything, I'll just push through.
Come back too early, not rest as much.
So sometimes it's really good to go, I'm going to step back and I'm going to make the calls on this one because I do know too much about my own body.
So a proud Victorian, you studied prior to landing at the University of Queensland at Victoria University, and then here at UQ studied a Master of Physiotherapy Studies degree, and now tackling a Master of Sports Physiotherapy. Should also mention you're a UQ Sports Achievement Scholarship recipient here and have been for a few years as well. It seems like university studies seems to complement you despite having a really hectic lifestyle. What do you like so much about tertiary study?
Oh, I just find like I'm a bit of a science nerd and science buff. And that's the thing I like about physio is it's forever evolving and improving. So you'll never stop learning. And I'm always wanting, same in my sport, like you're wanting to find out how you can do things better. And I personally believed that in all levels of undergraduate physiotherapy, there's so much to learn. You can't pack it into 4 years. Hence why I went on to do further studies because, I expect as an athlete that my physio can provide the utmost best evidence-based practice. I want to be able to give that back to my athletes that I'm helping try and achieve their goals now.
Your work ethic is, it's off the charts. I mean, the daily lifestyle you've talked about is incredible. But I guess for anyone listening who's going through the same work, study, elite sport journey that you are, how do you navigate those waters? Do you have any sort of helpful tips other than having such a passion for things, but how have you got through it all these years? Yeah,
it's just getting your network support set up around you and being okay with relying on those people. My partner knows that during the week he may not see me that much, but I will always dedicate my weekends to give him time and spend time with him. My bosses are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal with allowing me space when I need space or pushing me along when I need to push along. People, even here at the university, people like Emily Burrows and Emily Bates are in charge of the UQ Sport program. Just simple things of them keeping in touch with me and offering, this, how can we help? What can we support you with? And the fact like the UQ scholarship, that funding is huge. That makes me go, okay, well, I can work 2 to 3 hours less a week, train a little bit more, or give myself some me time because I've got that funding and support behind me. Or I don't have to study at 10 p.m. I can take a few hours off work or training or so forth and study in the fresh of the day because I've got that funding and support behind me. So, finding out what access and networks you can get around you and then being okay to rely on them.
2 UQ awards I just want to finish up with that I think we should pay particular credit to. So 2016, the first ever UQ Blue recipient in the sport of water skiing. So that's dating back to 1912, by the way. We have had 7 half blues awarded between 74 and 92, but you're the very first one to receive that honour. But also in 2017, you were voted UQ Sportswoman of the Year. Again, very first water skier to do that. 2 amazing university sporting awards, and particularly with the history of them dating back. How does that land with you?
Yeah, like I said, UQ's been a fabulous, fabulous support. And I remember actually going to apply for physio here and people like, oh, UQ's fancy school, like they're not going to let you do sport. I remember at the comments, and anytime I hear that now, I shut people down straight away. And I think it's been a phenomenal school that's really helped me in my sport. And yeah, those awards, I didn't expect them. And it was a pretty amazing night being able to go, and receive those awards. And basically, I need to probably thank all of the, the staff and support I had around me during my education for me to actually still achieve those results while studying. Like people like Sandy Brewer, head of health at UQ, like, wow. Like I would set exams, in staff offices and they were just phenomenal with letting me be able to go in and out of overseas while still completing my studies. So those awards are basically a reflection of the great environment that UQ's been able to put together for elite athletes.
It's like sport, isn't it? So many key people behind you.
Yeah, like that. Those awards signal a reflection of everyone around me, not myself.
You've mentioned it a few times, and it sounds like a great place to work, very supportive and allowing you to live out your water skiing dream. But you are a physio for Queensland Sports Medicine Centre, and you work with some pretty elite athletes as well. What's that journey been like transitioning to work?
Yeah, obviously it was really, like I said, networking, relying on your network. Like my boss, he was actually my physio when I was a scholarship holder at the Queensland Academy of Sport. And if I wasn't relying on him, respecting him, working well with him, I would have never got the opportunity to work at QSMC. Like it's one of the most sought after physio clinics in the industry. And I was like, I'm not Sports Masters accredited. I'll never get a job there. And he was like, no, we employ good people and we teach them to be a good physio. So like that networking from my sport got me the role I have today as a physio. And then through that, I'm now working with the Brisbane Lions and I work with the Olympic weightlifting coaches and team there, and then dabbling in a bit of some supercar race driving stuff. So, those opportunities, I'm just really happy that the reason why I got into physio was my physio helped me get back on the tour so early. I want to be able to be that for somebody else.
You're a very busy lady. Thanks so much for fitting us in today. How can people follow along your journey as you go along, especially a big 2021 coming up?
Yeah, so obviously, as you've heard, don't have much spare time in my life. So Instagram would probably be my one social media avenue. So yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's just simply Jacinta Carroll. And hopefully I have some stories coming up in the future with my plan of how I'm going to try and get overseas in October. So stay tuned on that. But yeah, also I'm pretty sure you guys here at UQ tend to repost or reshare some of my stuff. So I'm sure you won't forget my name when you see it there. But yeah, just really appreciate you guys, all the support you've given me so far. And hopefully we can make a good 2021.
Yes, bring home that fifth world title.
I hope so.
Good on you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.
So good to have Jacinta Carroll on the podcast. Just drop her name into YouTube and you'll be amazed by some of the water skiing videos you'll find. Thanks for the download, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the pod so you get every new episode as soon as it drops. More great guests coming up on the Armchair Fan Podcast.